Everybody, and welcome back to the second half of tonight's session. Every athlete dreams of going to the Olympics, and Jamie is no exception to that rule. So Jamie, if people want to see your CV, they can Google it. So instead of going through a formal CV, I thought maybe I can ask you some quick fire questions. So maybe first of all, where were you born?
Piet, Wege.
It was still PE then, I would
Yes,
imagine.
I left off there.
Siblings?
Five siblings.
Sure, okay. And schools attended?
Grey PE and Porous.
Which one's your favorite?
Oh no, don't ask me that question.
I'm not going to put you. Your favorite subject at school?
Mathematics.
Okay, because you've got to check your times. It makes a lot of sense. Your favorite meal?
Pizza has to be.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Your favorite drink?
Glass of red wine.
Cool. Unfortunately, you can see he's the athlete and I'm the.
Got a
not.
race coming up. So.
Your guilty pleasure?
Glass of red wine.
Okay. Are you in a relationship? I know there's some youngsters that want to know the answer to that.
I am in a relationship.
Okay. Your role model, who would you say is your biggest role model?
That's a very interesting question. I don't think it's a quick fire one, but I'll have to say my dad.
Okay, maybe why? Tell us why.
I think he shaped everything that I've come to believe today. I think it's the first, as a boy you just want to hear, I'm proud from your father. And I think that is a big part of my life and why I'm sitting here today. Okay,
so that leads us into your childhood. What was your childhood like? Was it just a normal childhood like everybody else? Your years growing up with 4 other siblings, I can imagine, could be quite interesting.
Yeah, as I'm getting older, I come to realize that a normal childhood is actually the obscure one. I think we all have a bit of messy childhoods, and I'm not a stranger to that. With 5 siblings, you know, my mom had a previous marriage, my parents are now still together today. There was obviously this wild mess, but I think the common theme was love and acceptance throughout our family. So yeah, it's an interesting upbringing, but it's one that I wouldn't change for the world. Yeah.
I know, and we'll get into that later, so maybe let's leave that for later. So where did this all start for you, this dream to go to the Olympics?
I think that's a loaded question, and I've come to believe that we as humans are made up of a sum of pivotal moments, a series of them. You know, neuroscientists deem this as the psychosocial stage of development that happen from when you're born all the way to you're 60, and it's basically just a fancy way to say it's moments in your life where you either choose good or bad. And so I think the short answer is yes, I was 12 years old when I watched the Olympics on television and I dreamed of going there, but I think it's much more complex than that. And I think that's cool why we're going to sit down today and try to dive into that complexity. There's so many things that I don't remember and I do remember in my life that I think had very important changes and wiring in my brain to where I am today, and for some it was rewired the other way and in a different circumstance. But I think the studies show, neuroscientists say that it can be shifted and can be changed at any point in life, and that's why I'm so passionate on talking about my experiences and the choices that I had to take through the good and the bad as growing up.
Yeah, and that takes me back to your siblings and your years growing up, and I know we discussed it before. You lost a brother, and that must have had a big influence also on your growing up and the choices that you made.
It did, for sure it did. It's not only, I wasn't the only one affected, and probably maybe the least affected out of my family. I was around 4 or 5 when I lost my brother, and you know, I think trauma blocked out a lot of the memories of that time, but it's shown in decisions that I've made that it had a huge impact on me. You know, I have a talk that I like to do to people, and when I get on stage, I always start with setting the scene and setting the scene for your funeral. Everyone has to envision and go deep into their funeral, and I try to catch them off guard, and I only announce it at the very end. And I think that stems from, you know, seeing my brother on his deathbed, and you know, him in a coma for weeks on end, and what that did to the people around him. And it was a strong life force, and I do believe that by doing that for people, you can create a strong life force and go on to achieve great things, or spiral down.
So I want to take you back, so how did that affect you? Do you think that was a pivotal moment where you decided that this is what I want my life to be, or not to be, or how did that play out?
When tragedy hits like it did, as I said before, there were a lot more people that were affected far more than me. And I think, of course, my mom was the most affected. And as a son who loved his mom, seeing her so hurt and going through so much, I wanted to do everything I could to make my mom smile, even at a young age. And even the people, my other siblings around, it's a very traumatic experience, and there's a lot going on in the family then, and I'm the youngest and not really conceptualizing what's just happened. So at the time I was the least affected, with what's going on around me. I don't really get the whole passing of a brother, one day is there, next day is gone, but as a kid you're like, I'm playing with the football, you just move on. But what I did see is the long-term effects on the people around me. And I think seeing those effects, seeing what my mom had to go through and how sad she was and how much she was grieving, I, as a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old boy, wanted to, just change that. Then, fast forwarding today when I'm 24 years old, those moments shaped me. But even looking back, and I'm very big on studying that stages of life and what it does to you. And even though the trauma has blocked out every single memory for me, I'm certain that it played a huge role in my determination, in my choices, and in this deep desire to inspire and help people that I have today.
Okay, so thank you for that, Jamie, and thank you for sharing that. Let's go back to grade PE. Primary school, do you play sports? Did you excel in any particular sports, or was there always this one thing that was more important, that you enjoyed more than any other thing?
I played all sports, so I was looking back, I was provincial water polo player, lifeguard. I played A-team rugby. I played club soccer. It wasn't not provincial, but there was club provincials, and I played soccer. I played every sport. And I gravitated to exercising and these sorts of things. But again, I think I had such a hold on my family, and I think my dad, in that same time, sometimes we always have to go back to this moment, he went through a change in his life where he went from someone who wasn't exercising, who got really big and and picked up a few, and he wanted to change his life. So I witnessed him go down the Ironman route, the triathlon route. So even though I was good at all sports, I saw my dad invested into something, and I wanted to in some way help him, in some way be with him, and in some way just share that with him. And I think, looking back, I think that's what drew me to triathlon, is to spend some quality time with my dad. Okay. Yeah.
And then the move to Paul.
Yeah.
Was that because of the athletics and the triathlons, or what was the reason for the move to Stellenbosch?
It's funny, sometimes you look back in your past and you're like, I can't imagine my life without that change. But at the time, I couldn't imagine my life with that change. And it's such a funny thing how, whether you call it God, the universe, or how it works. And I remember it was in the spur of a moment decision, honestly. My sister was going to university, and she said in a conversation with my mom, I just wish you guys were there to settle me into university. And my mom said as a joke, why don't we just move? And my dad was like, Jamie's got to finish up a grade PE. And I had my idols at that time, the sporting heroes, Jan Frodeno, Tim Don, all these amazing Ironman athletes that were in Stellenbosch. I was just like, as a 15-year-old, I want to go there too. And we were sitting at the table, my dad was like, well, if this happens, that happens, that happens, that happens, within the next month, we'll go. And yeah, I think it was destined to happen because the impossible just became possible, and we were like moving within 2 months to Porus. And yeah, as I said, now that was also a pivotal moment that shaped me into the sportsman and person I am today.
You don't have regrets that you didn't take up rugby, because I mean Porus is known for its rugby, had their best year in many years this year. You happy with the choice that you made, triathlete versus rugby player?
Sure, when I see what the guys get paid, I'm not too sure. But I think unfortunately I was a bit small for rugby, and yeah, I don't know, there was something about triathlon, the pursuit of the three sports, the endurance, the training it required. I felt personally that was what was going to drive me to be the best physically, spiritually, emotionally. So I think I did, gravitate towards that. So I'm happy.
So you mentioned the guys the top triathletes that were in Stellenbosch. Did you ever train with them? How did this all come together for you?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of incredible role models. From the age of 15, 16, I was, my friend group was essentially the people I trained with, which were all ranging from, at that time when I was 16, they were between the ages of probably 28 and 38. So a lot of wisdom, I think, and still today one of my best mates and training partners, Bradley Weiss, Flora Duffy, Olympic champion. There's so many triathletes that I've gotten to share the workload with, James Cunnama, Jody Swallow, and absorbing, and I do feel like I'm a bit of a sponge. I try to listen as much as possible. But yeah, all those lessons, all those bike rides, all those little keys, I think got me like just, one step above that. Like in a sport like triathlon, coming from South Africa, it's not a common career path, and it's a very difficult career path to make work. And many fail at it. That's why it's not a known sport, because it's an expensive sport and there's no funding. So for me to make it work, I needed to absorb, to try and climb the ladder and miss the snakes.
Mm. Yeah. So Jamie, obviously there are 3 disciplines. Now, there's only 24 hours in a day, and we know you've got to sleep 8 hours. How does your training schedule work? How do you manage to give appropriate time to every discipline?
Yeah, it's incredibly tough. I won't sit here and say it's easy. And it stems back to what I just said. I think that's why I chose it, is because it's extremely difficult. Even today at the age of 24, I don't have the hang of it completely, We're training every day, no rest days. We're training from, an easy day will be 3 hours of training. But when I say 3 hours of training, it's not including the drive to the training. It's really 3 hours of active. If we're stopping at the traffic light or robot, the watch gets switched off. So it's 3 to 6, 7 hours of training a day, trying to hit 30 hours a week. It's not like, with a sport like running, you're limited by the amount you can do because of the force of gravity and injuries and these sorts of things. In a sport like triathlon, you're essentially training, I would say, about 80% of the capacity of a swimmer, 80% of the capacity of a cyclist, 80% of the capacity of a runner. You add those up. I was good at maths, not so much anymore, but it's a lot.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, so now, is there time to relax, to have fun?
It's still things I'm trying to balance, I'm an extremist, so sometimes in my earlier years it was too much fun and too little training, and then I went through a stage where I went just, monk mode, no social life, these sorts of things, and also found the same sort of, at the end of both of these, same sort of sadness or unfulfillment. And then now I think I'm in a stage in my career where I am trying to find that balance, and it's a tricky line, 7 days in a week, I succeed 5 and I fail 2. But I think, looking back when I'm 40 years old and on this journey, I don't think it's going to be the races I remember, it's going to be the people and the friendships I created along the way. So I do make space for that, and I do enjoy my post-ride coffees and these sorts of things, or even post-race beer, yeah, for sure.
Going back now, the first big race that you won, what stands out for you?
So, big race, there's a few avenues you can go. Financially, the big race for people that maybe said, wow, Jamie Riddle has made it, But I think personally, there's one race that sticks out that no one will even know. I was 15, 16 years old.
I was hoping that you would go there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I was 15, 16 years old. I can't remember exactly. It was around about then, and I was racing against under 19s. And at the time, I was most definitely not the favorite. I was probably in line 5th, 6th best. But I knew that there was one way I could win, and that was by going solo on the bike. So I called my father in the room the night before, and he was always so supportive of me, and he always backed all my plans, all my goals. And he came into the room and I said, Dad, I really want to win this race, because I know if I win this race, firstly, I get to go on my first World Juniors. I get to go on my first international trip. I get to make a statement being the first under 17s youth guy to win the under 19 category in triathlon. I make a statement. And the only way I'm going to do that is be able to go solo on the bike and open a 2 to 3 minute gap on the working guys behind me. And for the first time in my life, I saw my dad look at me, and he said he didn't give me the nod of approval. He just didn't give me the shake of the head. So there was no like, yes, you can do this, but there was no you can't. It was like, if that's what you think and that's what you believe, that's the only way you can win the race. That's what you're going to have to do. And I went on and I did it exactly that. And I think I won by 15 seconds, but I got that gap on the bike, And that was the first time that it wasn't about the race. It wasn't about my talent. It wasn't about my training. It was about my mentality. That I was willing to put, all my eggs in one basket and just say, you know what, I want this, I want to do this. And I think that's kind of the first thing that I look back and I'm like, okay, that's where I first saw that.
Yeah, I mean, they say in all sports generally, if you're performing at the elite level, you get to a point where kind of everybody is equal. But it's the one that's got, the grit and the determination. That's something else, that bit of mongrel almost. Is that something that you acquire, or is that just something that you've just got? Was that something that you work at?
It's questions I ask myself on the daily, my whole life. Even today, one day I have the answer, the next day I don't, because one day you can do things and you can achieve what you want to do and you can overcome obstacles, and next minute life just hits you in the gut. So, but I think my answer to you today would be, I think it's grown, it's learned throughout circumstances, throughout moments in our life. And back then it was so strong because of certain things in my life. Then in a different point in my life, it's gone dull and it's gone heightened in some aspects. Right now I'm in a stage in my career where I'm at that stage that you're talking about, that the margins for error, I mean, if you look at the Olympics, the margins are so small. It's percentages, a game of percentages, and if we break that down into days, it's like minimal. And I'm in a stage right now of trying to reframe my mind, just as the person watching this that's maybe stuck in a lull. My lull is currently where I am at in the world. I want to be world champion. I don't want to be 10th in the world. I want to be world champion. And it's about reframing that. It's about, listening to what I have to say and listening to what other people have to say and taking my words, what I'm trying to tell people, and do the same for myself. So I think, to answer your question, I think we can grow it. And I think the biggest blessing that I've learned in my life is that I do believe we have a choice in everything we do. And it's about choosing subconsciously and trying to reframe and rewire the brain.
So obviously you've got a training program. Do you try and beat specific times, so kind of you build up and you say, okay, I need to do this distance at that speed, or in that time I've got to do the swim and this, and is that an indication of where kind of you're going to go, or how do you prepare for a race? Kind of, is there a build up and then you taper, but you kind of know in the times building up or leading up to the event, kind of whether you okay or not. Now the question is, so it's two questions. So obviously when you know the times are right and you're doing the right things and you're on top of your game, then it's easy to go and race, you're confident. What do you do when leading up to an event, things are just not going well, and you have bad days and you get a cold and you can't train the way but you still want to go out and win the race? So how do you pick yourself up to go out there and still do it?
How much time do you have? I think that's such a deep question, and such a good question to ask, because pursuing anything in life is an accelerated version of ups and downs to achieve a goal, I think. You know, if you're comfortable in what you do, you're not going to have those accelerated versions of being up and down. If we just rewind to Olympics, that was my low. That what you're talking about right now, that this is not going how I want it to. I am crumbling under the pressure. I am struggling. I'm 24 years old. I've got this being thrown at me, that being thrown at me, and I'm just trying to keep my head above water, and I'm not. And the sad truth is, and the hard truth is, sometimes you have to go through that experience to come back and look and be like, okay, I can break this apart now. I can take this puzzle apart, reshuffle the pieces and try again. And the easy part is the training. I promise you, for me, training is not an issue. Getting out the door and doing my thing is the easy part. Yeah, we have hard days, we all have hard days, you know, and I think it's only as hard as you conceptualize it in your head. The difficult part is the emotional part, the spiritual part. How are you handling that? How are you handling this thing between the 2 ears? And for me, you know, heading into Olympics, we were crumbling. I remember I was 3 weeks out from the games. My training was going as bad as could be, in my worst shape I could be, and my coach said to me, you know, we're gonna have to take a week off. Your body's not responding. We're not getting the training done. We have to try and absorb some rest here. So we took 3 days off. I wouldn't be able to go for a 5K run. And one day he just said, you know, get in the car. And we got in the car and he drove me up a mountain in Spain. And we got up the mountain and we hiked 10 minutes up the mountain, and I'm wondering, you know, what's going on here? No one, I promise you could hear the birds chirping, no words. And we got there and he opened up a bag and there was just a bunch of glasses. And he said, Jamie, I want you to pick up each glass and I want you to deem each glass something: frustration, disappointment, trauma, whatever it may be. And I want you to throw as far as you can and break these glasses. And just as a symbol, just like let it all go. So breakdowns create breakthroughs, and I do not have the answers, but I think, like, you know, just going through certain things and trying to be as detailed as you can in the process and learning from it. So now sitting here today, I feel like I'm far more mature. I know exactly in that moment what led me astray, what crumbled me, and I can put up, you know, walls in the future for these certain things.
Great, yeah, sure. Yeah, that must have been just the release and kind of getting rid of all of it. And kind of, did that refresh you and give you new focus and new energy?
Gave me new perspective. I think that was the biggest thing. You know, at that point, you're too far deep to turn the ship around. I think, unfortunately for me, the Olympics was a dream come true, but it was also a nightmare at the same time with how it went, and maybe not exactly in particular the race itself, but everything that was before that. It was so difficult. But it gave me perspective. In that moment, it gave me perspective on, you know, the life I live, how fortunate I am, all these things that I was grateful for. And studies show that you can't be grateful and anxious at the same time. They come from the same part of the brain. So being grateful took away that anxiety, that anxiousness. And even though I was unfortunately not destined to go and do great things at the Olympics just based off the training I had done, I was still able to go to the Olympics and live out a long-term dream and enjoy myself and enjoy the day. And, you know, I'm sure you can have anyone in this seat, right? You could have Olympic medalists, you could have whoever you want in this seat, but there is a story in the 20th place. And I think that's why I'm sitting here, because I'm a story today and I'm a story whether I win a medal, and I think people can relate to that.
Yeah, just listening to you, you know, I can take that for myself in business, in friendship, in marriage, in raising children. We can apply all of these things that you as sportsmen deal with. We can apply to ordinary day life as well. It's not always plain sailing, but it's having that perspective. So thank you for sharing that. I just want to remind the people online, if you want to ask any questions, you can see Jamie is very eloquent and very smart, so he can answer any question that you can pose. But so Jamie, the 3 disciplines. Which one is your favorite?
The one I'm best at or the one I enjoy the most?
So, no, we can do both.
Okay, the one I'm best at is swimming. In the triathlon, I'm usually leading out the water or the first few, but I definitely enjoy running the most. But luckily for me, we're on chapter 3, and by the end of the book, I'll be the best at running.
Okay. Yeah. There's a story about the swimming though. That swimming was not always that good.
Yeah, well, good would be an overstatement. It wasn't even a thing. You know, I had a big fear for the water. I was held under at a very young age and almost drowned when I was 3, 4 or some similar time frame. And ever since then, I created this huge fear for the ocean. And yeah, but I wanted to be one of the best triathletes in the world. And I remember one of the things that was drilled into me: you need to be really good at the swim. In ITU racing, World Triathlon Racing, it's very important to be in the front half of the race in the swim. And it's yeah, it's a cheat code for the triathlon. So I had to somehow learn, and there were a few tricks played by my father to get me in the water, and I got away from those tricks. But ultimately, it was having to face those fears and those traumas that, yeah. And funnily enough, I sit here with swimming being my strength. It's weird how the world works.
So how did you overcome those fears?
One step at a time. I think like I was a lifesaver, as I mentioned, but lifesaving is split into swimming and beach lifesaving, and I was a beach lifesaver. And as I said, my dad played tricks, so I wanted a wetsuit. He put a wetsuit on the line for me to do the sea event. I didn't do the sea event. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until, you know, one day it was up to me. And I think that's also a very important lesson. It was my choice now. Jamie, do you want to be a triathlete or not? It wasn't my father's choice, it wasn't my mother's choice, it was my choice. And once I had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, yeah, this is my choice, I want to do this. And then I can come from a position of power, I can get the right resources. I had my life-saving coach, I'll never forget, Porky, who walked me into the water, you know. And it started with just walking into the water, then I started to get into the first buoy, then I started with surfing, then had a bad experience there, got back out the water. And that's life, you know, just one step at a time, I think.
Wow,
yeah.
Amazing. Jamie, we know it's not a premier sport, so sponsorships and funding must be a massive challenge.
It is, and I think particularly in South Africa, not because there are no you know, big endorsers, it's just triathlon is not seen as a sport, you know, it's a B-grade sport. It's growing for sure, and I am trying my best to change that. I'm trying to, you know, in some way use what I've been God-given talents to, you know, lure sponsors in, I guess. But yeah, it's difficult, and in the beginning it was, you know, hosting my own fundraisers, beg, borrowing and stealing, you know, all these sorts of things to get me to certain stages. And you know, it's difficult, but I think across the board in South Africa, I think 99% of people are in the same boat with finances and these sorts of things. So I think realizing at a young age that nothing was going to be given to me, I had to go out and find it, helped. And still today, you know, I'm searching all the time.
Chatting earlier, you mentioned you off to Australia and Noosa to compete there, and the prize money that you spoke about, I thought it was insignificant, but I mean, maybe just share so that people can, you know, have an idea the prize money, kind of prize money that you guys compete for.
It's funny, to me I thought it was quite significant. No, it's you know, more than happy. The interesting part is if you win, it's great. So you know, I'm racing 3 races. The first, I'll talk in rands because the first place is probably about 200,000 for the first race, the second race is about 70,000 rand, and the last race is probably 300,000, plus minus. You win, it's great. You come home, the trip costs you 100k, you're walking home with 600-700, great, you've paid for half a year essentially. The problem with triathlon is the depth. So if I go there and I don't podium in all 3 races, I'm coming back with a major loss. So it's a bit of a gamble thing, you know, it's like, yeah. betting on the horse, and I'm the horse. So, and I've got the money. So it's quite interesting, and you know, growing up, trying to gain that experience, it's almost like going into a big negative before you can come into the positive. And yeah, as I said, you win races, life's great, but losing races, life's tough and it's stressful. So yeah, wish me luck in Australia.
Okay, cool. I see there are a couple of questions. Please share your experience winning the Namibian triathlon, just coming off a shoulder injury. Obviously somebody that knows you well, to qualify for the Paris Olympics.
Yeah, I think that's a whole story in itself. So essentially, a bit of background before I jump into that was, there was a criteria set out for us to qualify for the Olympics. And myself and Henry Skuman, number 1 and 2 in South Africa, went and we did that criteria. We achieved that criteria. We were well within the A standard of going to the Olympics. And I had picked up a shoulder injury towards the back end of 2023, and it had put me out for training, but well in advance of the Olympics. And then Triathlon South Africa came out with this new criteria that basically stated we needed to do these 3 races early 2024 to seal the deal on qualification, unless you had finished top 6 in a World Series, which I had not done, but I had achieved the criteria. So obviously I was injured, I couldn't do these races, and I reached out to Triathlon South Africa and I said, listen, I've achieved the criteria, I can go to the Olympics, there's no one else in triathlon that is anywhere near qualifying, I've got the ticket, please excuse me from these races, let me channel my energy into the Olympics and go do that. And TSA said, you're not at these races, you don't go. And there was a lot of tension. Don't want to go too deep into it, but essentially I had to line up those races. And physios and doctors told me that if I go, I could potentially snap my clavicle, because I torn my clavicle. And I went with no swimming, and yeah, God willing, I got through the races. And I think that race in particular, it was live streamed, and I had an interview afterwards where I broke down on camera. And it was everything, because so much was happening in my life at that moment. I just turned to Christ in my life, and He was a saving grace for me in the position I was in, and I just felt that an overwhelming sense of emotions, and almost like I just wanted to get a message out of hope, and that no matter what comes your way, no matter what enemy comes your way, we can overcome. Yeah. So that was one of the most amazing moments.
I saw that clip, and I wanted to ask you about that clip, because there was a lot of emotion in there, and if you just did you get lots of responses from people on that clip?
So social media is a funny thing. I've got a good, decent social media following, and it's funny. I put out a lot, and I try to share my highs and lows. And the ones that do well are the lows. People resonate with authenticity. People resonate with struggle. And putting out that interview and that really, I don't want to cry in front of camera, but in that exact moment, it's uncontrollable, and something takes over where you just speak from the heart, and people connect with that. And I'm very blessed that through my sport and through my journey, I've been able to, touch people, and they send me emails, direct messages, whatever the case may be, in those moments, saying, that completely different situation, but that has affected me. And that interview did go viral, and people really resonated with it, and it still warms my heart today thinking about it.
Yeah, it's touched many people, and so okay, let's go to the Olympics. I know there was lots of talk about the quality of the water and whether you're going to race or whether you're not going to race, and just take us through lead up, because I know you guys were told, wait and see, and we'll let you know, and so just take us through that whole thing.
Sure. So I think the first thing that I would like to start with in that is, the cliche saying is so true, the journey is the best part. You go through this whole journey and you arrive at the Olympics, and you have such expectations, of this. I don't know what you think it's going to be. You think it's just going to be complete elation. it was interesting because you have such a high expectation. You've been dreaming of this for so long, and you know, you wake up like normal, you go to bed like normal, and actually you're alone in that village. And I actually had some of my darkest moments in that village, you know, like this, almost like this what if, what's going on? Like, I knew I wasn't in good shape. I knew my race wasn't going to go well. I had people, you know, on my back for sort of like, you know, expecting me to do well. So that's an interesting experience in itself. That's not to say it's not all worth it. That's not to say it was not the best day of my life. These things are also true, but they can be simultaneously true. But yeah, the whole water quality thing, and I think for the spectators and the people around the Olympics, I think there's a lot of noise around the Olympics, right? For us athletes, like, my opponents were far more dangerous than the water could ever be. A bit of E. coli I could get through, but you know, a punch in the face or an attack on the bike, that hurts far, far more. So I wasn't too focused on it. Of course, we woke up in the morning at 3 a.m. I'd gone out for my jog, I'd had my 2 coffees, had my bowl of rice, and got this email, we're not racing anymore. So I was in shock, I didn't know what to do. And I went online and I said, I can't believe it, but our Olympics is postponed, I don't know when we're gonna race. And that was weird, but I think coming back to, I think for me, the perspective, the glass throwing with my coach gave me such a perspective on the Olympics. And I really wasn't affected that much by it. I think a lot of athletes were affected by it. For sure, there's an adrenaline dump, these sorts of things, but you roll with the punches. I've been through far worse, I'll go through far harder, so just went with it.
I know, I saw somewhere you chirped that South Africans actually, there are far worse things in South Africa than
Yeah, the tap water is way worse. No, I think like they're comparing to Swiss water quality standards or something, because look, people got sick, and to those people, if it was the water, I feel very sorry for them, but I didn't see any South Africans get sick. I was fine. And yeah, I have no idea how that stuff works. I know germs, if you're touching certain things, you can kind of build up a barrier. I don't know if it's the same with tap water, but I do drink the tap water in South Africa, and I know people who get sick from the tap water in South Africa. So, yeah.
So Jamie, it's interesting to hear you say you had some of your darkest moments at the Olympic Village, because some people say that's the highlight, being in the Olympic Village, seeing all these superstars and mingling with them. And was that not your experience?
I've got a very unique perspective on life recently, and that's due to my faith. And I think the Olympics it's an interesting dynamic, right? There's 10,000 athletes essentially that have got into their best shape. We all walk in our own journey to try and win this medal, and the reason behind winning that medal, what is it, right? And I think just being there, I was balancing all these questions. And as you can see, maybe the way I talk, I'm a deep thinker. I like to think deeply. My friends joke of it, but it's just who I am. So I'm going through all these emotions while I'm at the Olympics. You know, why is that person happy? What are they going to go do with that? If I had to win, what am I going to do? You know, what changes for me? All these questions, and it's maybe dark is not the word. Maybe not dark moments is the word, but I'm sitting there in a room that looks like a hospital bed. I don't know if you saw those cardboard beds. Sitting in a room with 4 white walls, my family's outside. I can't share these moments. And you realize, like I realized in that moment, that moments are only moments when you share them. If I had to win an Olympic gold medal and no one saw it, it wouldn't really mean much. So that was interesting. But then again, the race itself, it didn't go anywhere near according to plan, but the amount of people that were there from South Africa, the support, the videos is insane. It was the most spectated event in the whole entire Olympic Games. Of course, we have a massive course that gets, you know, people get to be around. Apart from cycling, sorry, they were 10 deep or something, but we were 5 deep everywhere along the course. Incredible. And then being able to, 2 hours after the race, but go see my family was one of the most heartwarming. You know, it was our dream. It wasn't just my dream. They had sacrifices too.
So you said coming into the Olympics, you were nowhere near where you wanted to be. Then running the race and getting to the finish line, how did you feel then?
I remember distinctively walking down to the start line. We get called out by our name, a number. the cheer, and you walk down. And I remember walking to the start line, and I was one of the first courts. There was a lot of 60 guys that had to come down. And I remember looking around, and there was a grandstand completely packed, and there must have been 100,000 people around. And I was just looking around, and I, seeing Paris 2024, the Olympic rings. They do play a heartbeat at the start, so they're also playing this doof 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 doof. And I just was filled with such joy. Like, I was filled with this immense joy, which is very strange to me, because usually before a race I'm in this fighter mentality, or I'm in this nervous mentality. I remember high-fiving a few of the friends that came and walked past me. I don't know what it was. I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. I think maybe the perspective thing, but I knew that the race wasn't going to go according to plan, so I could really absorb it in. And for sure on the race, when I'm running and I'm not where I want to be, there is of course slight disappointment, but an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the life I've lived and the experiences I've experienced.
Good. Let's go back to some of the questions. Your view as a youngster with talent, myself being the father to a talented sporting young child, how to maintain balance between pushing him too hard or just supporting? Your views as a child with a dad supporting.
I think it's a really, really good question, and I think, like, honestly, you should ask my dad. He was the best. He was the best at it. If it doesn't come from you, if it doesn't really come from you, I don't think, no matter how someone pushes you, you will be able to achieve. And I think being there, being loving, being supportive, and yes, guiding. Get your son on this interview, let him hear me speak. Those sorts of things will have an impact, but it needs to be wired in his brain and not the father's, I think. And I think we all want I'm sure everyone wants their children to do well. I definitely want my children one day to chase dreams. But what I've realized with me, it needed to be wired in my brain. If we go back to the swimming thing, there was a stage where my dad was like, you need to swim, and then I think he just realized, it needs to come from Jamie. He needs to be the one that says, I want to do this. And he can guide me and do the best he can in pushing me in that, in navigating me in that path. But any sort of push, I'm the type of guy to be like, hey, I'm out. If we're forced to do things, if I say to myself, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow, I don't want to wake up at 5. If I say I get to wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow, I want to wake up. So I think it's a have to get to mindset, and somehow your son the best. So I think that's a good way.
And I think also using the right words.
Yes, yeah.
I get to, I have to.
100%.
It's a privilege, but it's also a mindset. And I think, it's to encourage and not to judge.
100%.
Because I think that's, for all of us, it's the toughest thing as a parent if you see your child's got talent, and it's not necessarily their thing. And I can't live my dream through my son.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes where the challenge comes. There was something about a sports psychologist, whether you work with somebody. I think you've answered that. That's the guy that took you up the mountain. And
that was actually my coach, and he should get double pay because he does act as a psychologist for me. I feel very sorry for the man. But I used to work with a sports psychologist that was very sport performance based. And in that time of my career, he served me purpose, and I appreciate him immensely. For me, my relationship with my father and my relationship with my coach is my soundboard. They'll be the first to tell you that I'm more of a person that likes to work. I need to almost touch the stove. I need to work out things myself, and they act as a soundboard. That day when he took me to go break those classes, he didn't really have to say anything. But I think for many people, a sports psychologist could be beneficial. So, and maybe in another part of my stage of my life, I might need one. But for myself right now where I'm at, like, I'm starting to work out myself, and right now I don't need it, but I do have people in my life that act as that.
Good.
Not professional help though, which,
Would you say modern pentathlon and sub-disciplines helped you with triathlon prepping?
I never did modern pentathlon. I did lots of sports, right? I think for sure modern pentathlon could help you with triathlon, but as we're seeing now, triathlon is accelerating at such a fast pace. When I was 20, or now let's say, everyone that I'm racing against was a runner that turned triathlon. Everyone was a biker that turned to a triathlete. They had one thing and then they picked up the other two. And now you're seeing the new generation started out as a triathlete. So don't be afraid to just go all in on triathlon now. And that's not to say stop your rugby at the age of 13, stop your water polo. Those things are incredibly beneficial for creating friendships, for gaining self-confidence, these sorts of things. But nowadays the level is so extremely high. I mean, if we look at the Olympics now, the guy who won, Alex Yee, a few years back could have qualified as the 10K Great Britain athlete for the Olympics. So he could have gone for the Olympics for track running, you know. We have in the women's field, Taylor Nebb did the time trial. So it's the level's so high that you almost need to start out, as a triathlete. So that's quite an interesting one. And don't be afraid to do that. Triathlon's an awesome sport.
Okay. How is it to be a pro triathlete at a young age? What can you advise young ones on priorities of life? We were going to get there, but yeah, maybe answer that question.
Pro triathlete at a young age. So I'm just going to take this the way I think he's meaning. You know, at a young age, I wasn't necessarily a professional because I wasn't earning any money, but I looked at life. I looked at everything that I was doing in a professional manner. It's interesting. For me, I became Jamie, the guy that does triathlon, Jamie, the guy that swims, Jamie, the guy that bikes, Jamie, the guy that runs. It was my identity. It was a part of who I was. So you become a different sort of identity, but in everything we do, right, you become an identity of what the choices you make. So for me, like growing up, being that guy, it did set me apart, and it held me to a sort of standard. So I think looking at a sport in a professional manner at the age of 15, 16 is only beneficial. I wouldn't say don't get too serious too young for sure. But yeah, I mean, it was incredible, and I didn't go to university, and I'm so blessed with the life I live, so go for it.
I see some of the people asking the questions that I want to ask later. So the question from Spencer: what do you plan to do when you're too old for triathlon? Will you become a financial planner like your dad?
No, hopefully my dad's a good enough financial planner that he does something with the money I do have. Yeah.
Great answer. Great answer.
No, I think this in something in this sort of space, I really do enjoy. I guess mentoring, talking. I don't know what it is. I think I resonate with the people that struggle because I struggle, and in some way helping in some capacity.
I'm going to take you right back to the beginning where we started. As a 12-year-old, you had a dream to go to the Olympics. How important is it to dream?
It's everything. It's the one thing that I can say at any stage of your life. Dream is a big word, so it scares a lot of people. Goal setting, however you want to, say it, but I think it's honestly everything. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but I research a lot. And neuroscientists have proven this. The anterior mid-condylar cortex in the brain, a part of the brain that grows by doing hard things. And now scientists are not calling it the seat of willpower, but the seat of the will to live. You stop, you become stagnant, you start dying at any stage in your life. Now, of course, a 70-year-old man can't go to the Olympics, but he can set certain goals for his life. And I think goal setting is purpose-driven. I think that's a big thing. Like if you set a goal or you have a dream, you put purpose on your life. You have to be very careful with that purpose. In certain parts of my life, that purpose was skewed. In Jamie world, ego-centered world, all these sorts of things, and I'm unashamed to say that. I think this is just me, but I think that life is about the people around us and spreading love. And I think using your dream to ignite your soul to pursue a better version of yourself, and in that process share that with people, or in some way, light someone else on fire. So I think dreaming is honestly the root of success, the root of purpose, and I encourage everyone to dream, and it doesn't have to be these crazy Olympic dreams. It can be any dream, Dream to run a sub 20-minute 5K, go for it.
Great. What inspires you?
That's a very deep question, I think. Everything I say is deep. But what inspires me, I think throughout my life, there's many different things that inspire me. And I think it's important to have different things that inspire you. I think this is not a made-up answer. I think coming from South Africa, we look around. As I drive home from here, Wynberg, to Stellenbosch, I go past Khayelitsha and Kayamandi. And that's not to say that the people there are, in a much worse circumstance, but we can all agree that their life and their challenges are far different from mine. And it gives you a perspective living in South Africa. And I know that every single international I've brought to our country leaves with the same common theme. They love this country, and the happiest people are the people that are in those townships. And I don't know what it is. I'm still trying to work out to this day. But visit those kids and it'll give you a different perspective on life. So I think that my inspiration comes from my country, and I know that sounds cliche, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And yeah, I think like as a South African, you've been blessed with a perspective of life, and yeah, they inspire me.
So we spoke about managing expectations going to the Olympics. And knowing that you're not well enough prepared. But, as you come through the ranks and you go to these world events, I imagine you didn't expect to win the Olympics. So, we are so programmed to win, to be on the podium where people see us. How did you manage that? Because, you're talking about driving past Khayelitsha and Kayamandi and being inspired by the people there and how happy they are. And you watch the Cape Town Marathon over the weekend and you see people just finishing the race and being so happy. Do you have a clear goal going into a race saying that, if I finish top 20, that's going to be where I want to be? Or is it always to go out and win and then deal with not winning if you just...
Always changing, always evolving. That answer is always changing. I think right now, I think we can be driven by the will to win. I think we can be driven by the will to be the best. Personally, for me, I'm not that guy, and I can't sit here and pretend that I'm that guy. I don't get inspired or motivated by the gold medal or being the best, and I don't even, for certain races, I don't even set these like, top 20s. If we look at the Olympics, I knew that going in, I'm an optimist, but I'm not a delusional optimist. I wasn't going to win that race, but I knew that in the best shape possible, I could potentially get a top 10. What happened with my training, I knew that I was far off that. So, you can subconsciously create these sort of places and things, but it does set expectations, but also limitations. So you got to be careful with that. I think it's important to use certain goals to drive you, but I wouldn't, put that at the end goal or end target for myself. One thing when you were speaking about, me driving past Kayamandi and Khayelitsha and seeing how happy they are, but I think the inverse is true. I also see I've been held up at knife point twice while I was on my bike, and I've looked into the eyes of someone that was willing to kill me for my bike. And in South Africa, there's a lot of sadness too, and I can be inspired by that too. And I think that takes a lot to look around and be inspired by something like that as well. So it's not only a happy face. I think the disappointment in Olympics that I have to go through, I can be inspired by that too. And I think you can use all sorts of experiences to inspire you if you have the right perspective. No one wants to rob a bike.
Sure.
No one dreams of robbing a bike or hurting someone.
So Jamie, your dream as a 12-year-old was to go to the Olympics. Now you've made it to the Olympics. What next? What is the next goal in terms of your career as a triathlete? Or as a triathlete or the next Olympics?
Yeah, I think there's a few goals. I think there's a few dreams. I want to, of course, be back at the LA 2028 Olympics. I want to be fighting for a medal in triathlon. There's an underlying goal of wanting to represent South Africa in another sport at the Olympics, whether that be swimming, cycling or running. I think that'll be an incredible achievement and something that drives me. There's many goals for my life. Right now I'm going into a slightly longer course scene, so half Ironman. Many people can relate with the Ironman brand. It's the half Ironman distance, if you know triathlon T100. But honestly, just being okay with waking up and being happy with where I'm at and just like enjoying my days, like that is honestly the biggest blessing. Like just being able to wake up and do what I want to do, because I know so many people can't do that. So I think that's like keep that frame of mind.
Great.
Yeah.
Jamie, the matrics have just started their exams. I know they started writing this week, and they kind of getting to the end of a chapter of their lives, and they're starting a new chapter potentially next year. Any advice for them?
Look, it's scary. It's a scary change. I didn't do the university thing, which most people do that I was friends with, and I had friends that did that. And I think just if I had a child, if I had a son, what I would say is make your mistakes. I think it's important to make your mistakes, but I think it's important to also really understand who you are and what you want to do and how you want to impact this world. And if that's partying on a Friday, Saturday night, then so be it. But if it's not, be brave enough to step aside and choose the other option, because I can promise you the fulfillment will come in that aspect. The fulfillment will come in choosing what you really want to do instead of just following like a sheep, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this whole peer group thing, social media, must have been things that you also had to deal with. Yeah, and still have to deal with today. I
can be the first one to put my hand up and say I touched the stove. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect. Alcohol did that, smoking did that. I've done it, and I look back with no regret, because it shaped me into the person I am today. But in the same breath, I would like to have an impact on someone to not do that. I believe that life is something far bigger than that. There's something far bigger out there that we can pursue and chase after, even above this universe. Great.
Jamie, I don't see any further questions. I've enjoyed this talk so much. You're wise beyond your years, and you're an inspiration. And thank you for being so open and honest and just sharing from the heart. I think there's nothing better than being authentic. And thank you for joining us tonight. And I hope our people that have dialed in have enjoyed and got as much pleasure from this as I got. And that there's something that resonates with you, that you can take back, share with your children, your grandchildren, and be inspired what Jamie has achieved. So Jamie, from our side, thank you so much. Hopefully more people will follow you, and we wish you good luck with your races. I know you're flying out tomorrow to Australia. Good luck with those races, and we'll follow your Olympic dream and hope to see you on the podium at the next Olympics. So to our friends on the line, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, and safe travels and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night.